Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, of course, this is the day after overall the very highly anticipated or somewhat highly anticipated trilogy fight between that of Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Triple G Golovkin. And of course, all in all, if you've seen my fight review, my fight analyzation, you know what I thought overall happened in the fight, and you know what I thought of Mr. Canelo Alvarez's performance. I thought that it was a very, very good performance, maybe even a great performance, especially over a fighter that you had two very rough goings against. Now, there are certain people all in all stating that, well, shouldn't have Canelo Alvarez knocked out Gennady Golovkin or performed even better against him all in all because Gennady Golovkin's age was clearly showing. Well, you certainly could argue that, but let's also keep in mind of the context that not only did these guys have two very, very tough fights overall in the past with each other when it came down to it, and certain times, all in all, when there's trilogies like this, the third one sometimes can be the most boring. No, sometimes it's not the case like that. Sometimes when you talk about, Riddick Bowe versus Evander Holyfield, that ended up being, debatably the most entertaining match. Or when you talk about Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, that ended up overall pretty, being pretty much the same like the rematch. But Canelo Alvarez was coming off of a loss, the second official loss in his career, in his last fight against Dimitri Bivol, in a fight that I thought that he lost 8 rounds to 4. So Canelo Alvarez did need to somewhat take it easy here, or he did overall have to be very intelligent here. And I have no doubt in my mind that there probably was some sort of pressure on Canelo Alvarez. And is there also a possibility, as what Canelo Alvarez said, that he had a hand injury? It's very possible. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't think that Canelo has any reason to lie because I don't think that he really looked bad in the fight at all. I just don't think that, he stopped Gennady Golovkin, but I really don't think that there's a big problem with that because I thought Canelo Alvarez looked very technically sound in this fight. I thought he looked very, very good. The only thing that I would say about Canelo in this fight is that I wish that he would have maybe done a little bit more of a body attack. That's if all in all that you were really trying to see Canelo Alvarez perform extraordinarily well. But other than that, I would give this performance an A, maybe an A plus. In terms of, the technical sound, it certainly was on that A plus level. But in terms of overall him probably, pushing it to another level, I'd probably give the all around performance an A. But anyways, Mr. Boxing Ego, AKHi TV, Dante's Boxing Nation. These guys, of course, were not super duper impressed with Mr. Canelo Alvarez's performance. What a shocker. But anyways, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review Mr. Boxing Ego first, and then maybe we might review some of the other channels when it comes down to it, and let's just see what they have to say.
Do you want to hear the Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin 3, the realest breakdown? If so, stay tuned to this.
The realest breakdown, aka the breakdown to where I hate on Canelo Alvarez and I can't stand this dude whatsoever. Anyway, I could talk about certain points right now, but we're gonna save that a little bit for later. Anyways, let's see what he has to say.
Video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I am back with some more boxing. SLC, subscribe, like, and comment. This is the realest breakdown, Canelo versus Gennady Golovkin, part 3. Now, after some fights, I actually wait and put out the video the next day because I need time to think about and process what I've seen. Unfortunately for this fight, that is not needed because the fight was trash. I thought this...
Now, very particularly interesting that Mr. Ego calls this fight trash. Now, in terms of if you're talking about the anticipation, and if you're saying that, well, I was expecting this fight to be much more competitive, yes, then from that standpoint, the fight wasn't very good. But I think any of us that had a logical and sound mind knew that more than likely Gennady Golovkin was not going to be as competitive in this fight as the other two. I mean, that's just common sense. He hasn't looked like the same fighter now for a few years, ever since that Canelo Alvarez rematch. I think that it took a little bit of wear and tear out of him. He doesn't have the same coach. He doesn't have the same level amount of power. He doesn't have the same level of movement. It just is what it is. And even with that, Gennady at this time is probably still around the A minus level. But when it comes down to it, he's just not the same fighter that he used to be. So I don't think any of us that were looking at this fight with a logical and sound eye or someone all in all that's, wasn't hoping that, or didn't have personal stakes in this fight. I don't think any of us overall were looking at this and saying, wow, this is going to be a 50-50 fight, because we all knew that Canelo Alvarez was the fresher fighter. But the reason why this was a good matchup for Canelo was because of the last performance that he put on. Anyway.
Fight was easily the worst of the trilogy. Almost everything that I've stated in my previous videos, if you guys follow the channel, came true. Triple G, let's start with him. Triple G is 40 years old, and I know some people say age ain't nothing but a number, but in this instance, Gennady Golovkin Triple G looked every bit of his age in.
Well, I agree with that, Mr. Boxing Ego. Gennady Golovkin certainly did look like a quote-unquote shell of himself. But the thing is this. I really don't have a problem with you mentioning Gennady Golovkin's age. But you can't cherry pick overall certain fighters all in all that allegedly look good against older fighters, and then a fighter that you don't like, you're going to say, oh, well, that guy was old. Because these guys all in all, they always do this with Canelo Alvarez. Now, don't get me wrong. Gennady Golovkin clearly was not the same fighter that he once was. But it really doesn't matter what opponent Canelo Alvarez fights. There's always some excuse with these guys. Whether, the guy already has one loss on his record, or, the guy was coming off of his worst performance, this, that, he's a weak European fighter. Like, it's always some bullshit. And that's how you can tell that that's a hater, when overall they just constantly will not give this dude any credit, and their standards are always changing for that guy. Because if a standard is always changing for a certain fighter, and don't get me wrong, sometimes standards do need to change. But when it comes down to it, when you are so repeatedly changing the goal line for that fighter or for that athlete, that's because you don't like them.
Fight, and I'm talking about throughout most of the fight. It's hard to even score rounds for him, and it was almost blasphemous when you consider this as a trilogy, because most of the time, like let's say Eric Morales versus Marco Antonio Barrera, or Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez, which had a trilogy, and then they had a fourth fight. But those are fights that ultimately they stand the test of time, right? This fight, not so much. I think the reason it looked like this is because of what I told you previously. Canelo Alvarez waited Golovkin out, and he figured he had better experience at 168. Several fights there. He fought Rocky Fielding. He fought Caleb Plant.
People always bring up this point about Canelo having better experience at 168. Well, yes, of course he has better experience at 168. But weren't you the same guys all in all that were claiming that Gennady Golovkin needed to go up to 168 pounds and face Andre Ward? The guy all in all that was the best fighter there of that generation. So would you guys have gave Gennady Golovkin that excuse had he fought Andre Ward? Just cut the bullshit, man. Like, this isn't overall a Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia situation. Gennady Golovkin is the same size, if not even a little bit bigger, than what Canelo Alvarez is. So come on, just stop the bullshit.
I'm undisputed there.
And if you're going to use the point all in all to where, well, yeah, but that gave Canelo Alvarez time to face bigger and better opponents, all in all, or bigger and stronger opponents, well, that point really wouldn't work either, at least when it comes to new media, because they're always alleging that Canelo Alvarez apparently faces these weak white boys that have no power. So which is it? And don't get me wrong, Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, they're not known for their, A-grade power, but they did have decent boxing skills.
He fought against Caleb Smith. He fought against Avni Yildirim, all these guys. Meanwhile, Triple G kept his whole career pretty much at 160. That plus coupled with other variables like Triple G has been inactive, right? Canelo Alvarez, people were praising him and saying that, Canelo Alvarez has been very, very active because he was fighting Yildirim and Caleb Smith in the span of and Billy Joe Saunders in the span of 12 months.
Right, but besides Avni Yildirim, all those fighters that you just mentioned were decent fighters. All those fighters you just mentioned, like Saunders and Caleb Plant and Callum Smith, all those dudes were undefeated champions. So it's it just is what it is. Once again, this is the same guy that gave credit to Gervonta Tank Davis for facing two bums in a row in Isaac Pitbull Cruz and then overall Rolly Romero. Same guy.
But it's not about fighting.
But yet that fight was not trash, when it came down to it. It was not a bad performance that Gervonta Tank Davis had over Isaac Pitbull Cruz. That's how you can tell overall this dude is so full of shit, man. And don't get me wrong, Ego at times will have very decent points, even logical points, but he just oftentimes lets his emotion and his racial issues, especially with certain fighters that he either A, really loves or really hates, just get in the way too often. He's almost kind of like, I don't want to say this about Shannon Sharp, but just comparing him overall to an analyst, and I'm not really sure how much racial issues Shannon Sharp, has. I'm not stating that for Shannon. But just like if you were to watch Shannon Sharp on the Skip and Shannon Undisputed show, Shannon, a lot of the times, will have logical points. But then whenever it comes to Tom Brady or Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Aaron Rodgers, he lets his emotions get way too much in the way. And a lot of the times it ruins his analyzation.
It's about who are you fighting. And at the elite level, I would rather see better fights and have the fighter fight twice a year. Unless it's like...
Well, right, I understand that, Mr. Ego, but what fights do you really want to see Canelo Alvarez in? These guys always allege that they want to see Canelo in this fight, but then when he's about to fight those fighters, they claim all in all that they don't want to see the fight. Boxing Ego, once again, I already did a video on this where he was caught red-handed, basically when it came down to it. I did a video on this about a year ago, all in all, or whenever the hell, it was thought that Canelo maybe was going to face Jamal Charlo next, which I believe was sometime last year. And he stated all in all that Canelo, we want to see him face the elite black fighters. But then when apparently that fight was about to go down, he said, well, I don't really want to see it. That fight should happen a few years ago. So, dude, what are you going to be happy with? Like, once again, that's how you can tell the difference between someone that is actually bringing out logical and objective points and someone who's just an apparent hater. Because they're never happy with whatever this dude does.
Prospect, someone up and coming, yeah, you give them more fights per year, like a Brandon Lee or Jerron Boots Ennis. And for the most part, I know Brandon Lee got hurt in his last fight, but for the most part, they're not taking bad damage to the point where they would be out of the ring or need to be out of the ring. Canelo in round one came out aggressive, almost disrespectful, like to Golovkin. He fought very simple.
Well, I don't think it was really disrespectful. I just think all in all that Canelo Alvarez was putting on intelligent pressure.
Similar to how he came out versus Bivol. See, Bivol is not 40 years old, and Bivol fights different, has his own style, and he's much fresher, much more in his prime than Gennady Golovkin was. So
well, I would agree with that. And what I'll say all in all about Canelo is this. If he is going to rematch Mr. Dimitri Bivol, and that's if Dimitri Bivol is even able to get past Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, because there is no guarantee. That is a great 50-50 fight, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen from Zurdo Ramirez, because I haven't watched him all that much. But when it comes down to it, if Canelo is going to rematch Dimitri Bivol, he is going to have the stamina that he had in this fight. Now, we did see Canelo tire out a little bit in the final few rounds, but that's just going to happen with Canelo. Canelo's never going to be a guy that has a Terrence Bud Crawford or Tyson Fury or, Floyd Mayweather Jr. type of stamina or gas tank. He's just never going to have that. Canelo is always going to have slight stamina issues. That's why he has to pace himself. He can't throw constantly, so he has to rely a lot on his counter-punching ability and his accuracy and his defense. And when Canelo overall is able to do that, he fights extraordinarily well. And that's why he won this fight, in my view, so wide. At least it should have been wide. I don't know what the hell the judges were thinking scoring this fight 7 rounds to 5 and 8 rounds to 4. I guess because they gave Canelo Alvarez a gift in the first fight, and they gave Canelo, the second fight. Well, in my view, he deserved to win the fight. They said, hey, you know what, screw it. We'll try to give Gennady a gift in the third fight. Anyway, even out the score.
Oh, Bivol corrected that quick. And he uses his footwork a lot different. Golovkin he's not known for bouncing and using footwork like that. So,
well, Gennady, in my view, actually has decent footwork, but he has decent footwork for a pressure fighter. If you push him overall on the back foot, he's going to be uncomfortable.
Completely.
At least if you're a fighter like Canelo. Now, when we see Gennady Golovkin against David Lemieux or certain other fighters like that, he was on the back foot and he was able to completely outbox them. But David Lemieux is a completely different fighter from Canelo Alvarez. You can't really, if you're a Gennady Golovkin, you can't really beat Canelo Alvarez on the back foot because you just don't have those abilities. Because Canelo is faster than you. When it comes down to it, he's probably even a better counterpuncher than you. And Gennady at his peak was a great counterpuncher. But if Gennady was going to beat Canelo, he was going to have to push forward.
Different fighters, but Bevo corrected that because Canelo was trying to just blaze him and hit him with these haymakers. Canelo tried that same game plan with Gennady Golovkin, but Gennady Golovkin, he just stayed with his fundamentals and he was just jabbing, just jabbing. Now, the sad thing about this fight is this just is just not a trilogy fight. It just doesn't, in any sense of the word, live up to its predecessors. Just imagine a movie like, I remember Die Hard. I'm a huge fan of the Die Hard series. And then they had one of the Die Hards, like I think it was the very last one. It doesn't hold up well.
I think that the first Die Hard with, of course, Bruce Willis, he's been around that series forever, or the main face. And also you had Alan Rickman, I believe, all in all, who's unfortunately no longer with us. That was probably one of the best action movies that I've ever seen. Probably one of the best movies I've ever seen.
I remember even the Live Free or Die Hard, that one was cool. But after that, they made an additional one, or maybe even several. And I remember it just wasn't the same. It wasn't like Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2, Die Hard with a Vengeance. And that's what this fight was. It just didn't live up to its predecessors, as I mentioned. Triple G looked very slow. Round one, that's the word that comes to mind. Slow. Looks slow.
I would agree. Gennady Golovkin, all in all, did not look like his peak form. But once again, what else were you really expecting? So it is what it is. I don't know what else other people were expecting. Anyway.
Oh, he looked plotting. He looked like he couldn't pull the trigger. He looked like he couldn't get off the blocks. And
in my view, Gennady Golovkin could have pulled the trigger more. And this is what I always mean overall when we talk about fighters with heart. So many people take a look at a fighter that didn't necessarily pull the trigger and they say, oh, well, they don't have any dog in them. We all know that Gennady Golovkin has a great amount of dog in him, but he knew his limitations. He knew that if I basically, excuse me, that if I tried to go at Canelo Alvarez when it comes down to it, or if I get super aggressive, he's quicker than me. And although I don't have the response time and I don't have overall the athleticism anymore to basically just go in on Canelo Alvarez like that, because if I do, he's going to hurt me.
It just looked like his timing was off by a lot. Like Triple G just didn't seem to have.
I don't really think that his timing was necessarily off. I just think all in all that he was a little bit too old for Canelo Alvarez, and his time is past. It just is what it is. I think all in all that he's still seeing some of the shots that he could have potentially landed, but he does not have overall the abilities that he once did to beat someone like a Canelo.
And it almost was like he had never fought before. So it was such a.
I wouldn't really say that. I just think that Gennady knew that more than likely that he was just too limited for this fight.
A regression. And when it's early in the fight, you kind of wonder, is he just like playing possum? Because there's no way Triple G trained for 6 to 12 weeks from what we've seen for past Triple G. And, at the first couple of rounds, 3, 4 rounds, I'm like, okay, he's 40 years old. Is he trying to bait Canelo Alvarez? Is he trying to.
Well, certain people, I don't know, I seen in the comment section, they said that they believed that Gennady Golovkin thought that later on Canelo would tire out and that he would try to turn it up. I don't think that that's really overall what happened. I think that Gennady Golovkin from the first bell on just tried to work behind his jab, just like he did the other two fights. And that was not necessarily a bad game plan, but when it comes down to it, you had to do more than that. And I think Gennady even knew that, you know what, if I really try to get in some of my, whopping punches in there, he's going to hit me. And not only is he going to hit me overall with 1 or 2 punches, he might be able to hit me with a few because he is just that much faster than me at this point. That's why, all in all, he was not able to pull the trigger.
Make Canelo Alvarez overconfident, and then he's gonna like explode with this different part 2 of his game plan. But for the most part, that wasn't the case. He really just looked aged in the fight, And I know the Canelo Chupapi Muñeños and the Canelo fans say, oh, you're hating. There's nothing to hate. The fight wasn't.
Well, I think that some of the stuff that you do say, Mr. Ego, all in all, is truthful. But let's be real. You don't like Mr. Canelo Alvarez. That's very clear. So you can try to deny it all you want to when it comes down to it. And once again, sir, you don't overall, have the right to allege overall that anyone else is a super fan, the way that you talk about Mr. Deontay Wilder and some of the other fighters that you tend to like. I mean, the way that he talks about certain fighters, you would swear to God, all in all, that he was their partner. Anyway.
Good. I'll tell you what it is. And like I said, you shouldn't have clicked on this video if you didn't want to hear the realest breakdown, because that's fully what I intend to give you. Another thing that I thought was...
No, you tend to give a breakdown all in all, basically all in all, based off of your emotion. So you're not going to give Canelo Alvarez a lot of props in this fight because you were hoping that Canelo Alvarez was going to look bad. And these guys all in all are still claiming that, Canelo looked bad in the fight. I don't know how, because Canelo, in my view, won basically almost every single round. I gave Gennady Golovkin only one round on my scorecard. Only one.
Exceptionally weird.
Watch League of Legends videos ad-free and learn to win uninterrupted. Try our student plan.
Okay, let's discuss our 6-week, 42-day fit.
Other thing that I thought was exceptionally weird when it comes to this fight with Canelo and Triple G. Canelo, he's fought pretty frequently. And you have Triple G.
For those of you all know that want to see a great Canelo Alvarez performance, go ahead and rewatch the Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant fight. And I watched some highlights yesterday overall to kind of confirm my suspicions, which is that Canelo did not throw anywhere near enough body shots yesterday against Gennady Golovkin. Now, whether maybe he was not fighting at full capacity, maybe it was the hand injury, or maybe he just said, you know what, I don't really want to go to the body against Gennady Golovkin because he's experienced against me, and I'm just going to overall kind of move in and out and use my slick boxing ability. I'm not really overall going to try to go for the knockout as often. If it comes, it comes. Could be any one of those reasons. But in my view, Canelo was not even fighting at 100% capacity yesterday. Because when I see Canelo Alvarez at his best and when he truly is trying to break a fighter down, he'll go to the body immediately. He'll go there with left hooks. He'll try to hit you in the arms. All in all, when it comes down to it, he'll use his lead hand to stick it in your face and use that right hand to stick it into the body. Go ahead and take a look at the Caleb Plant fight. That's exactly what he does the whole entire fight, and eventually he broke him down.
Who just fought against Ryota Murata not too long ago. Initially, Triple G was supposed to fight like on New Year's Eve, and then for some reason the fight got pushed back, and then they end up fighting the first week of April of this year. So the thing that was interesting with this particular fight is I think Triple G from April to the second week of September fighting Canelo, and I understand Ryota Murata is not as good as Canelo, he's not as good of a fighter, but it still looked like Triple G had aged in that time. Like Triple G.
Well, I would agree. Now, what's particularly interesting, what I wonder is that had Gennady Golovkin now fought, Canelo Alvarez in his last fight, and had he fought Demetrius Bubo Andrade or Jamal Charlo, would you still be stating that? I highly doubt it, but anyway.
In April versus September, so I thought that was extremely weird. I thought the fact that he had a fight earlier this year would be of benefit, because if he had any ring rust or cobwebs, maybe he could get that out of his system. But he still looked pretty slow. Timing was all.
Well, there wasn't really any ring rust when it came down to the talk about it. It's just that Gennady Golovkin was not the fighter that he once was, A. And B, Canelo Alvarez is just a better fighter than probably what Gennady Golovkin was even used to in their second fight. Canelo Alvarez, in terms of all-around skill, is the debatable best fighter in the world. Debatably, because there's a couple other arguments you could put out there. But Canelo is a very special fighter.
And surprisingly enough, even with all this, Canelo still couldn't drop him, stop him, never really even hurt him. Triple G even said...
Well, I wouldn't say that he never hurt him. But when it comes down to it all in all, once again, I don't think that Canelo was even going at 100% capacity. But anyway.
Fight. Look at my face. My face is clear. I feel good. Tonight is Canelo's night. And it was pretty...
Gennady Golovkin's face certainly was not clear. It looked like on the know that he got hit with a bunch of BBs. Like, get the fuck out of here. His face was clear. Come on.
Accepting of the loss. But I think Triple G, even with his ring walk and his demeanor, he knew he was getting $20-something million. It looked like he was just going through the motions. And
I agree. I think Gennady Golovkin knew more than likely that he was going to lose to Canelo. I could tell his energy overall before the fight. He knew more than likely that he would not have enough. But he said, hey, screw it, why not? This is going to give me a chance overall to avenge the loss. Not only that, but I'm going to get a whopping $20 million. And this might give me an opportunity to maybe promote myself, possibly unify the middleweight division. Maybe I can get a fight against Janabek. Maybe overall I can, unify the middleweight division, get a fight in Kazakhstan, and overall then I'll just end my career and kind of ride off into the sunset.
we know Triple G has a chin and things like that. I think this hurt Canelo even more because...
Of course you do. Once again, all in all, I reviewed the video to where he was talking about how this fight hurts Canelo Alvarez's legacy. How does this hurt Canelo Alvarez's legacy? He completely dominated him. And this to me did not even look like Canelo was fighting at 100% capacity. So it is what it is. But once again, Mr. Ego was not going to be happy with whatever result in this fight as long as Canelo Alvarez was the victor. So that's why he was always trying to say up into the fight week, well, if this happens, Canelo looks bad. If this happens, Canelo looks bad. If this happens, Canelo looks bad. Because he just does not want Canelo Alvarez overall to look good. He not only overall wants to tear him down as a fighter, he wants to tear him down as a brand.
Everybody knew why Canelo picked him coming off the Bivol loss and had certain expectations. Like Triple G has been regressing. Thought he lost to Derevyanchenko. He got hurt and lost.
I gave Golovkin the slight edge over Derevyanchenko, but once again, after that Canelo Alvarez rematch, Gennady Golovkin was never the same fighter ever again. Never.
Rounds with Ryota Murata. So this was expected to be a punctuating win for Canelo. But ironically enough, after Canelo was...
It was a punctuating win. I don't understand how you can win 11 rounds out of 12 rounds unless you looked like Ryan Garcia against Emmanuel Tago or whatever the hell that dude's name was. I don't know how the hell you can win the fight pretty much by complete shutout and look the way that Canelo Alvarez did, and apparently he looked bad. Like, come on, dude.
Was dominating the early rounds. He ended up getting hurt in round 9 and stumbling. And then from that point...
Well, I'm not really so sure about that. I've seen Canelo Alvarez back up a little bit. Could he have been slightly hurt? It's possible, but listen, we all know that Canelo Alvarez, that he can take a punch. There's a reason that Canelo Alvarez has never been knocked down before. Now, what I will say is this. By round 9 onward, you can tell that Canelo Alvarez, that he was starting to tire out a little bit. Was that a part of the reason why he probably was backing up a little bit? And could it be possible that Gennady hit him with a good shot and Canelo said, you know what, let me back off because I'm, losing a little bit of my steam? It's very possible. But to me, it was really nothing to, sweat over. Anyway.
He seemed like he had to respect Triple G more, and he seemed a lot more tired towards the later rounds. And I thought round 12 was pretty sloppy, and it was a bad fight. So even though I predicted almost verbatim how this would play out in my videos, I even tweeted, and in my tweet, I literally said Ego Stradamus. That's how I know I'm the best when it comes to this boxing and giving you guys the detailed information that is consistent. But
Mr. Ego was like one of those guys that will give you 17 different breakdowns of how the fight could potentially go. And then when one of those things goes right, he's like, see, I told you. He gives you overall, these multitude of breakdowns, which is cool, no problem about it. But, like, come on, dude. Like, this is what he always does. He always states that, see, I told you this was going to happen. Well, it's not that hard, all in all, to give you several different breakdowns and one of those things overall to happen. Like, it just is what it is. Anyway.
This fight will be like Brandon Rios versus Mike Alvarado 3, where it's a huge disappointment and it's clearly the worst in the trilogy. And
Well, no shit. Who really predicted, all in all, with a logical sound mind, that this was going to be the best out of the trilogy? No shit. Once again, that's how you know, all in all, that this dude, that he's just after Canelo. He does not like him. Now, once again, I don't have a problem with you stating, all in all, that, this was the worst fight out of the trilogy, because it was. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I don't see you overall talking the same way about Gervonta Tank Davis when he fought Rolly Romero, or when he fought, Isaac Pitbull Cruz, when that fight completely flopped when it came down to it. So all this, once again, I find that very particularly interesting.
before the fight. Fast forward to the future, since we've actually seen the fight now, you guys let me know what you guys believe. So you'll see it on the screen in this video. The tweet actually was done on the 16th. They didn't fight until the 17th. And I called it straight down the middle. And that's why I don't care about feedback. People saying, oh, you're hating.
Well, what really did you call Mr. Ego? Because you you call several different things at once. You say basically, you know, on a certain breakdown that these several things could happen. Like which is it? Because the day before the fight, you were basically stating that, I don't know, Golovkin can give him a lot of problems because, you know, all in all, if it ends up being controversial, so like, what was your main prediction? That's what I need to know. Anyway.
And this and that, because people will say whatever they want, but the truth will be revealed over time. What's done in the dark comes to light. And I know what I was saying, I believe, and that's what this...
What the fuck is this dude even talking about? He's acting like there's something to hide here. All the fight was, when it came down to it, was a warm-up fight for Canelo Alvarez. All in all, it was to close out the trilogy. Yes, it was not going to be as good as the other two fights. Anyone with a brain could tell you that. Anyway.
Fight was. It was easily Mike Alvarado versus Brandon Rios 3, where the first two fights with Brandon Rios and Mike Alvarado gave the fans a lot of great memories, and it was a fun, scintillating fight where they were memorable. You know, someone to even say instant classics. The third fight, so much had changed. Ruslan Provodnikov made Alvarado quit. He had some troubles outside of the ring. You know, when time passes, time is unforgiving. So by the time Brandon Rios and Mike Alvarado fought for the third time, I was at that fight. It was in Colorado.
They got the old man from Squid Game as Gennady Golovkin's face. Well, once again, I find that particularly interesting because weren't these the same guys within the past couple of years that were calling for Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade to, you know, overall fight Gennady Golovkin? Isn't that so particularly interesting, depending on who overall these certain fighters face, that, you know, it depends on whether they're good or not. You know, any opponent that Jamal Charlo or Andrade faces, oh my God, it was a great performance when it came down to it. But then Canelo, he faces any opponent and, oh, I wasn't that thoroughly impressed. Like, come on, man.
And that's why I remember it so well. People were throwing beer cans because Alvarado quit again versus Brandon Rios. And it didn't live up to what the first two were. And I think that was...
Well, right, but it wasn't supposed to live up to what the first two were. If Canelo Alvarez overall was coming in here as a very decent fighter and even a shred of what he was before, he was supposed to win this fight somewhat dominantly, and that's exactly what he did. And you were even stating overall before the fight that it would hurt Canelo Alvarez's brand if the fight was controversial. So now that Canelo Alvarez dominated the fight, you still bitch and moan and complain about, oh, well, this is still bad for Canelo Alvarez's brand. No, you want it to be bad for Canelo Alvarez's brand. Anyway.
Dead on with Canelo versus Triple G3. And I'm not even mad that it's a dominant performance like where Canelo...
Yes, you are.
Pretty much won majority of the rounds. Because it's how Golovkin looked. It was the opposition you were in. In fact, it's surprising that Canelo didn't look better given the fact of which version of Triple G actually showed up. Like, I can understand if it's Floyd May...
Well, the only thing that Canelo Alvarez didn't deliver was the knockout. And had he went to the body, I think all in all consistently, he probably would have. But when it comes down to it, I don't think that Canelo was fighting at full 100% capacity. I still think that he put on a great performance. But I don't think that Canelo was really worried about getting the knockout. At least it didn't seem that way to me. Anyway.
Whether versus Arturo Gatti or Diego Corrales, rest in peace to those guys. But those fights...
Yes, two of the most overrated fighters probably of the past 20 years. You know, a lot of people are not going to like that. Those guys are actually very limited fighters. They had a lot of heart and they put on a lot of great fights, but there's a reason why they lost almost every big fight in their careers.
Floyd just showed these levels above them thinking and skillfully, so that's why those fights look like that, and they were one-sided. This fight, Triple G, a horrible version of Triple G showed up, and Canelo still got hurt with him, still got a cut over his eye, and seemingly didn't really have too much that he could do with him. He never dropped him, hurt him, things like that. And it just makes you believe, imagine if they didn't wait 4 years and then he would have ran the rematch back a year after the second fight, you know, or when.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, to me, it's not really that big of a deal because we already know what happened all in all in the rematch overall when they immediately rematched each other. Canelo Alvarez was able to pull it off. So it just is what it is.
First signed to DAZN at the very least, maybe we would have got a different, you know, type of fight. So a huge L for DAZN. They spent $65 million on a fight that was
a huge L for DAZN. Oh, please, dude. And you know, don't get me wrong when it comes down to it. You know, I understand if Eddie Hearn was talking shit on PBC, but come on, man. Like, all this dude does in his videos is try to shit on DAZN and Canelo Alvarez and a few other fighters when it comes down to that he don't like. This is why you cannot rely on this dude's videos.
utter trash, undercard trash. So that's my.
The undercard was trash, but apparently Gervonta Tank Davis versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Gervonta Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero, apparently those were great events because LeBron James showed up there. Why don't you mention with Mr. Canelo Alvarez yesterday, Mr. Ego, that Stephen Curry was there, Joe Rogan was there, Dave Chappelle was there, Anthony Pettis and Nate Diaz were there when it came down to, you know, I believe that there was a multitude of other celebrities that were there as well to watch Canelo Alvarez. Okay, why don't you bring that up? But you won't bring that up with Canelo because you can't stand his ass.
This breakdown, I don't really have too much. It's not even worth me going on too long. The fight wasn't good.
Of course not, because Canelo Alvarez looked dominant and you're very pissed off.
Let me know what you guys think. Canelo remains undisputed at 168. This is why, in my opinion, he's not fighting Charlos and the Andrades, and of course.
Well, the Charlo fight was apparently supposed to happen last year, and you weren't even happy with it. So shut your goddamn mouth. This dude, man.
The Benavidez of the world, because
if that version of Canelo even shows up against Jamal Charlo will not stand a chance. He will not stand a chance.
You're having a hard time doing away with a 40-year-old that you used to spar with, and you've shared the ring.
And let's keep in mind with Mr. Jamal Charlo, he couldn't even knock out a dude in Juan Macias Montiel last fight, to where all in all, that dude has been knocked out multiple times before, and he was a complete bum. But I don't hear anything on that. Like, get the fuck out of here, man.
Previous to this fight, 24 rounds. And imagine if Floyd Mayweather fought Marcos Maidana a third time, because we already seen a major difference from the first Maidana and Floyd fight and the Floyd Maidana 2. So imagine if Floyd, after sharing the ring with him 24 rounds, you don't think Floyd Mayweather would make even more adjustments and make it look even easier? So it's like, people keep saying,
dude, what the fuck are you talking about? like this guy is acting like Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin had a 7 rounds to 5 fight. Like, what are you talking about? Canelo Alvarez just beat him like 11 rounds to 1. Like, what are you talking about? And do we think that Floyd Mayweather Jr. would knock out Marcos Maidana? We all know that wouldn't happen. It just is what it is, at least not during that time in his career. So come on, man. You just butthurt, you just pissed off because a fighter that you don't like ended up winning the fight dominantly. just overall, go suck on a popsicle when it comes down and sit in the corner.
Canelo's the face of boxing, and he's improved since the Mayweather loss. But he
is the face of boxing, and he has improved ever since the Mayweather loss. But you're trying to deny that all in all because you can't stand his ass. Anyway,
laws seem to be the same.
Like, to me, it's not really that hard to admit. All in all, that Canelo, that he obviously has improved ever since the Mayweather loss. You can see it in several of his fights. Does that mean that he's greater than Mayweather? No, it doesn't mean that he's greater. But when it comes down to it, you can tell that he is a better version of himself than what he was several years ago. It's not that hard to believe. Do you think that Jermell Charlo is a better version of himself now than when he lost to Tony Harrison? You know, of course you probably do. And that's only within a span of a few years. So why would Canelo not be a better version of himself overall within a 7-year time span? Especially with the opponents that he has beaten. Like, come on. That's how you know who a hater is. Because they just deny certain shit that is so goddamn out in the open and apparent. Like, come on, man.
Laws. And I truly think this fight actually hurt him more than it helped him, because...
Well, the fight, according to you, was going to hurt Canelo Alvarez no matter what happened. So you're not really a viable source.
When it comes to Canelo being pound for pound number 1, Is that really look like a real thing? You fought a guy who had never fought at 168, who's
Well, this win, in my view, is not going to put Canelo Alvarez back at the #1 pound-per-pound spot. If Canelo is, once again, going to reach the #1 pound-per-pound spot, he is going to have to avenge his loss to Dimitri Bivol. Period.
40 that you've already sparred with in the past, and you fought as a pro 24 rounds, and you didn't even really look sensational. So many questions. Drop.
How did he not look sensational when he won the fight almost 12 rounds to 0? Sure, he didn't get the knockout when it came down to it, but, you know, one could maybe expect that to happen since these two are very experienced against each other. So, come on, man.
Thoughts in the comment section. The realest breakdown of them out.
Anyways, that's really about it for Mr. Ego. Now let's go on to Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation and AKHi TV. We're going to hear Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation's point of view of Mr. Canelo Alvarez and what he thought on the fight. Let's see overall what he has to say. This dude all in all is so desperate to make Canelo Alvarez try to look bad. He showed the only 3 punches that Gennady Golovkin probably landed throughout the whole entire fight. Like, dude, come on.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Canelo Alvarez, he gets a unanimous decision win over a very old, faded Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin, he looked...
Well, he certainly all in all did not look like the same fighter, but once again, Dante, had this been Jamal Charlo or Demetrius Boo Andrade, would you have claimed that this Gennady Golovkin all in all was not the same fighter? Once again, when Gennady Golovkin all in all was against Sergey Derevyanchenko and Ryota Murata, they did not state all in all that Gennady Golovkin looked older. It was not until Canelo Alvarez that they pulled that excuse out of their ass. And in my opinion, it's not really even an excuse. Gennady Golovkin did look older. But don't change your narrative all in all just to make a certain fighter look bad.
Every bit of 40 years old in this fight. Not only did he fight like he was 40 years old, but his physical appearance was also showing his age of 40. When fighters age dramatically, there's 2 things they normally lose: reflexes and the ability to pull the trigger. You see the openings, but you just can't take advantage of it. And that's what we've seen for the most part when it came to Gennady Golovkin, which is why Canelo Alvarez not being able to knock out Golovkin is surprising. You're fighting again.
No, it's not really that surprising because Canelo Alvarez, once again, I don't think that he was really going for the knockout. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, at least not with 100% capacity. And on top of that, these two are very experienced against each other. And Canelo's coming off of a loss. So to me, it's not really that big of a deal.
A 40-year-old, very physically faded Triple G. And not only could you not knock him out, but Canelo Alvarez never even hurt him. He never even knocked...
I'm not so sure about that. But anyway.
...down Gennady Golovkin. And it's simply because Canelo Alvarez does not have the intelligence to set up the knockout. I mean, it's amazing to...
Oh, please. Canelo Alvarez apparently doesn't have the intelligence to set up the knockout. Canelo Alvarez has knocked out very decent opponents. He knocked out Sergey Kovalev. He knocked out Billy Joe Saunders. He knocked out Caleb Plant. Now, in some of his bigger fights, he hasn't always gotten the knockout, like against Lara or Golovkin in the first couple of fights. But just because a fighter doesn't get the knockout doesn't mean all in all that, you know, that they had a horrible performance. Like, come on.
I think Ryota Ramada actually put on a much more impressive performance against Gennady Golovkin than Canelo Alvarez did. If Canelo...
Come on, dude. Are you serious? That's how much of a fucking idiot this dude actually is. Like, are you kidding me? Ryota Murata, who ended up getting knocked out, I believe, within 9 rounds, had a much more impressive performance. Well, there was moments to where he made Gennady Golovkin uncomfortable. But to me, this wasn't really a bad performance because this was just Canelo Alvarez overall really showing his technical skill set.
Would have fought the way Murata fought Golovkin, Canelo would have had a good chance of knocking out Triple G. Sergey Derevyanchenko, he also...
If Canelo Alvarez would have went to the body early on and went to the body consistently, he would have stopped Gennady Golovkin. But I don't think that Canelo Alvarez, I don't think that he was as preoccupied with getting the knockout as what overall he stated that he was. He did not look like he was trying to get the knockout to me. Overall, I think overall Canelo Alvarez, that he basically said, well, if the knockout comes, it comes. I'm basically overall going to show off my technical skill set here when it comes down to it. But he did not look like he was going for the knockout in this fight, at least not for me. Now, he was winging a lot of shots overall to the head. But Canelo Alvarez, when he truly tries to set you up for the knockout, he also will go to the body, and he'll go to the body very early. I didn't see any body work from Canelo Alvarez in this fight whatsoever.
Put on a better performance against Golovkin than Canelo Alvarez did. And just keep in mind, it should have been easier for Canelo.
How can you put on a better performance against a fighter when Canelo almost won this by completely shutout, debatably complete shutout, and then the other fighter, all in all, he won a few rounds and then got knocked out within about round 7 or round 9. Like, do you hear yourself, dude?
To get the knockout over Golovkin than Sergey and Murata, because Canelo was fighting a much older, different version of Triple G.
No, he was fighting about the same version of Gennady Golovkin. Those fights only happened a couple of years ago. Once again, I've already stated this. Gennady Golovkin has not been the same fighter ever since the Canelo Alvarez rematch. But they want to also allege that Canelo fought a worse version of Gennady than what Dervyachenko and Murata did, even though the Murata fight happened this year. So that doesn't even make any fucking sense. But when it comes down to it, all in all, they want to allege that because they also still want to allege that Gennady was only an average fighter. Anyway.
I tell you right now, if all of these guys were naturally in the same weight class, you put Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, David Benavidez, Gervonta Tank Davis, you put all of those guys in the ring with this same Gennady Golovkin, they all stop him hands down. Now, the one thing that happened in this fight that was pretty interesting is in the 9th round, Golovkin actually hurt Canelo. He staggered him.
It looked like there was a possibility that Canelo was a little bit staggered, or at least to the point to where he was backing up. But once again, I don't think that he was majorly hurt. But in my opinion, it's not really anything too bad to worry about. Canelo Alvarez, all in all, once again, he had to be very careful in this fight. Apparently, he also had a torn ligament in his hand from what I'm hearing. How true that is, we'll see. I believe it because I don't think Canelo has any reason to lie, because he didn't really look bad in the fight. He just didn't get the knockout. But anyway.
Lightly with a punch, Canelo started to back up, and that's when Gennady Golovkin started to get aggressive. And the funny thing is, as soon as Golovkin started to let his hands go, he started winning all of the rounds.
No, he didn't. Gennady Golovkin won about 2 rounds max in this fight. Canelo Alvarez had 11 rounds on my scorecard. Like, come on, dude.
Almost every round that Golovkin threw punches in, he won those rounds. The only rounds he didn't win was obviously the ones where he wasn't punching at all, which shows you that Canelo Alvarez is still the same flawed fighter. Matter of fact, you look at these two.
No, Canelo Alvarez, all in all, is still a very great fighter. He shows overall 2 punches that landed throughout the whole entire fight, and he tries to allege overall how many holes Canelo Alvarez has in his game. Like, come on, man.
Side-by-side clips right
now. Is Canelo Alvarez somewhat still a sucker for certain jabs at times? And Gennady's, we all know that he has a fantastic jab. So, and on top of that, they're experienced against each other. So, did certain jabs land in this fight? Yes, but Canelo Alvarez, at his best, does have a very, very good defense. Because a person that is just a sucker for jabs 24/7, they're not overall going to beat elite opponents overall like Canelo Alvarez has beaten.
Here, one is Canelo obviously sparring, and the other one is him fighting against Triple G. And you see he's getting hit with the exact same triple jab. When that sparring footage surfaced of Canelo Alvarez basically getting outboxed in sparring, of course, Canelo Alvarez fans, they defended Canelo, saying, hey, man, that's just sparring. Clearly, it's not just sparring. This is who Canelo Alvarez is. These are...
Well, listen, when it comes down to it, a lot of the times sparring is a lesser version, of what overall, an actual fight is. So we can't always take sparring seriously. Sometimes it can tell a little bit of the story. But I don't think, all in all, Canelo Alvarez getting hit with that punch is a really big deal. It looked like, all in all, he was separating his guard, all in all, to probably land a counter, excuse me. Now, once again, will he sometimes be susceptible to a jab? Yes. If you're going to beat Canelo, you're going to have to put your jab in there because, he always has had a little bit of problems with avoiding a jab. Although he's gotten better at it, but that is one of his few flaws, but he has gotten better at it over time.
Flaws that he will always have, which is why it is all downhill for him when it comes to all the other challenges for Canelo in the near future. DAZN was pushing for Canelo to commit to a Bivol rematch, which I thought was pretty interesting because now, once again, there is no easy fights for Canelo. These
guys have been saying that for the last several years. They've been saying that there's been no easy fights for Canelo Alvarez. There hasn't been any easy fights for Canelo Alvarez for the past 10 years. Canelo Alvarez has been facing very decent opponents for the last 10 years. Okay, so come on.
Most likely have to either take the Bivol rematch, which he will lose, or he's going to have to fight his mandatory David Benavidez.
I would like to see Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol, but the fight that I would actually really like to see right now is Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo. That's the fight that I would like to see.
Or vacate the belt, or even fight Jermall Charlo because they're going to offer Canelo the most money he's ever been offered to take a Charlo fight. And I don't see Canelo winning any of those fights. Especially,
I don't think you truly believe that, Dante, because every time Canelo and Jermall Charlo is brought up, you then all of a sudden have an excuse to why Jermall Charlo may lose the fight. Don't let Dante fool you. He knows all in all that a lot of the bullshit that he's stating right now is not true, but he has a narrative to play out.
After the way he just looked against a 40-year-old Gennady Golovkin that looked 40 years old. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out.
Anyways, that's really about it for Dante. We'll review one last little short video by AKHi TV, and then all in all, we'll be done with the video. Okay, so now we're going to review the last part of this video. At least I believe the last part of this video. And this is going to be overall the fight review by Mr. AKHi TV. And AKHi TV, of course, a lot of the times I tend to disagree with just as much as Mr. Ego and Mr. Dante, because just overall, like the both of them, he also can be very, very biased in his commentary. But anyways, let's see all in all what he ends up saying about the fight. Let's get into it.
Congratulations to Canelo Alvarez for winning the trilogy against Gennady Golovkin via unanimous decision. This fight went exactly to a T how I predicted. Despite that a lot of fans believed Canelo was going to knock out Gennady Golovkin, I knew that wasn't going to be the case because Canelo is not that type of a fighter that takes chances like that. Plus, he doesn't have the gas tank to break someone down consistently every single round. Canelo simply doesn't storm his opponent with pressure. If anything, Canelo applies intelligent pressure. Nevertheless,
yes, which is something that you should do overall if you're a great fighter and if you're putting on the offense. Listen, overall, to respond to somewhat of Mr. AKHi TV states there, Canelo Alvarez isn't just going to go in there, balls to the wall 100% and knock you out if he doesn't think that is viable. And I think that maybe Canelo Alvarez could have went for the knockout, but he did not really do a body attack early. That could have been for a multitude of reasons. It could have been maybe all in all because maybe Mr. Canelo Alvarez, maybe he did in fact have a hand injury. I heard that it's possible that he had a torn ligament, who knows, in his hand. Could have been that. It could have just been all in all that he was not going at full capacity. Maybe all in all he did not want to try and get the knockout just in case he ran into something. Or maybe he just didn't feel comfortable. It could have been a multitude of things. But all in all, I still thought it was a very good performance. Now, talking about his stamina, and to say that, Canelo does not have the stamina to break him down or go after you round after round. Well, what I will say is this. Canelo Alvarez is just never going to have an A+ gas tank. He's just never had that. And that's why Canelo Alvarez over the years has actually gotten a little bit better as a fighter, because he's had to learn how to pace himself. He's had to learn overall to become a more accurate counterpuncher and accurate attacker on the offensive end. It's helped out his defense. Canelo Alvarez is one of the best, if not the best, defensive fighter in the world of boxing today. And some people may say, well, what are you talking about? Take a look at his fight over Dimitri Bivol. Yes, but if you take a look at a lot of the fights, especially where he is at his best form, Canelo Alvarez is extraordinarily hard to hit. His defense is very, very good. Very good. Maybe even great if you want to put it on that level. Canelo Alvarez is a great defensive fighter. And that's why Gennady Golovkin barely even landed anything in this fight because Canelo Alvarez, his head movement is very, very good when it came down to it. His feet even looked faster in this fight to me than what they usually were. So I got to congratulate Canelo Alvarez. I thought that he had a very, very great performance, or at least a great performance.
Last from the first round. Just like I predicted, it was Gennady Golovkin's jab that kept him in the fight. Matter of fact, that's all he threw all night long. I
don't think Gennady Golovkin really was ever in the fight. Now, he did throw his jab, and of course, Canelo, he's always been a little bit susceptible, to a great jab. And Gennady, we all know, even at his worst, still does have a great jab. So it was going to land here and there. But I don't think that Gennady Golovkin really was ever in this fight. There was a couple of rounds where he was able to make it more competitive than before. But you could have a legit argument that Gennady Golovkin didn't win a single round in this fight.
Count how many right hands Golovkin threw, which is not many. Nevertheless, the first 2 rounds were extremely close, and they could have went either way. I believe Gennady Golovkin won 1 round or possibly both, just by simply controlling Canelo with the jab. However, after the second round, it was all downhill from there, all the way until the championship rounds. Gennady Golovkin did absolutely nothing. He did not let his hands go. I'm not exaggerating when I say Triple G jab was the only punch he threw for like 8 rounds straight. It was pretty evident that Father Time caught up with Gennady Golovkin because he was extremely gunshot in this fight. Keep in mind.
Well, I would agree that Father Time definitely did catch up with Gennady Golovkin. But this is why I also state that when certain people state that a fighter does not have heart, like when I reviewed Mr. Boxing Ego's video about Mr. AJ Anthony Joshua, where he was trying to trash on him a little bit. Now, from Mr. Ego's perspective, it probably was the truth, but I think that he also put a little bit of extra barbecue sauce on him, at least alleging that Anthony Joshua doesn't have as much dog in him. Sometimes a fighter, they just realize when they're outmatched, and I think just like when Anthony Joshua fought Alexander Usyk, Gennady Golovkin realized it here, and he said, Canelo Alvarez is not only quicker than me, but he's a very excellent counterpuncher, and if I try to get my punches in there, I don't have the same speed that I once did, and overall, I don't have the same X factor as what I once did. And if I keep trying to go in there, I'm going to get knocked out because he's going to counter me.
Golovkin never got hurt in this fight. However, it seemed like he just...
I don't know if I would say that, but, you can state on the note that he never got knocked down.
And pull the trigger whenever he saw an opening. But finally, in the championship rounds, when he was desperate, as soon as Gennady Golovkin let his hands go, he started giving Canelo problems and winning the championship rounds. Which, if Gennady Golovkin...
No, he wasn't really winning the championship rounds. He maybe won 1 or 2 of them. That's really about it. Golovkin, and once upon a time, he was a very decent fighter. Great fighter, even if you want to put him there. But no, Gennady Golovkin, there was very few rounds that you could have gave him in this fight. Like, this is the second person now that I've heard basically state that, once Golovkin was letting his hands go, he was starting to win the rounds. No, not really. Not only was Canelo Alvarez a little bit tired within the final few rounds, as you could tell, which is normal for him. He's never going to be a Tyson Fury or a Terrence Crawford or a Floyd Mayweather Jr. or a Rocky Marciano or whoever the hell else you want to put up there that has elite stamina. He's just never going to be one of those guys. Canelo's never had that A+ gas tank, and he never will. A lot of the times that's just natural, just like how people have natural punching power and natural hand speed and, natural boxing intelligence. Canelo just does not have that natural stamina as some of those other fighters do, but he can still go for a decent amount of the time. But when it comes down to it, all in all, no, Canelo was winning the majority of these rounds. And in my view, I scored it 11 rounds to 1.
Did more of that early on. We could have saw a different trilogy. Instead, Gennady Golovkin...
I don't think, all in all, that we would have seen a different trilogy. And the reason why that is because this fight pretty much overall was always going to end up this way. And the reason why that is because Canelo is pretty much at the peak of his career. And Gennady Golovkin is not the same fighter that he used to be. It just is what it is.
Fought to survive, where he was extremely gun-shy of Canelo Alvarez counterpunches. So congrats to Canelo Alvarez for closing the chapter on the trilogy with Gennady Golovkin. That's the good news. The bad news is that Canelo Alvarez did not avenge his loss to Bivol. in order to fight Triple G for the third time, a fight that no one asked for, where he failed to deliver the knock.
You can so tell with the way that Mr. AKHi TV talks, he really wishes that he was a black man deep down. This man tries so hard each and every video on and all that I see to try to act as black and as wigger white boyish as possible. It really is something else. But anyways, just to talk about Mr. Dimitri Bivol, that is a great fight. I would love to see that matchup again because Canelo Alvarez, in my view, he is going to have to make certain adjustments. And Dimitri Bivol is also going to have to make certain adjustments as well. In a way, I think he has to somewhat fight Canelo the same, but he is going to have to make certain adjustments because Canelo more than likely is going to come into that fight as a better fighter than what he was before. But Canelo, if he is going to win against Dimitri Bivol, he's going to have a multitude of game plans. He's also going to have very decent stamina, and he's going to have to be prepared to get in a war.
He promised against a 40 years old Gennady Golovkin. With the facts being laid out, drop your thoughts in the comment section below, subscribe below, and click on the notification bell to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV. Peace. And I'm on to the next one.
But anyways, that's really about it overall for this little review. I just thought that I would review 3 of the channels, but I just thought that was very particularly interesting. But anyways, I thought that the performance by Canelo Alvarez was a great performance. I just would not say that it was the greatest performance that I've ever seen in his career, because I thought that maybe there were some more things that he could do, but, who knows, there could be a multitude of reasons for that, because in my view, Canelo did not attack the body enough, and I was a little bit surprised at that, but who knows, there could have been a multitude of reasons for that, but we'll see what happens next. There's going to be a multitude of options for Canelo Alvarez, just like there always is. He could take on the Dimitri Bivol match. He could take on, all in all, the Jamal Charlo match, the David Benavidez match. He could possibly take on somebody else. Who the hell knows? But it is going to be very, very particularly interesting. Once again, the fight that I would actually want to see is the Jamal Charlo fight. That's the main fight that I would want to see next, just to see if Jamal Charlo could actually beat that of a Canelo. I highly doubt it. I would give him about a 25 to 30% chance, but you never know. It would be particularly interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see what happens with Mr. Canelo Alvarez next.